You're listening to Community Heroes podcast featuring people sharing about their stories with their disabilities. And now for your hosts, Brandon and Pate. Welcome back to Community Heroes podcast. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the USA Paralympian sitting volleyball player, Heather Erickson. How are you doing today?
Good.
What is your disability, and can you tell us about it?
So the doctors still don't know what the official diagnosis is. They call it pseudoarthrosis. Essentially what happened when I was a baby is when I came out, I had a growth on my leg and they thought it was cancerous. They went and took it out, removed it. It was fine. And then I broke my bone as a baby and the bone never healed. So we did 18 major surgeries from when I was born to when I was 8 to try and get the bones to grow back together. And they all failed. And then by the time I was 8, the doctor was like, you can either amputate and be able to get into a prosthetic and start playing sports, or you can try to do like 20 more surgeries and there's still a possibility of a fail. So they don't know what caused it. They don't know what was the reasoning. But they officially call it pseudoarthrosis of the bone.
Of course, how does your disability affect your everyday life?
For me, being a below the knee amputee, it doesn't have a huge impact in my life right now. I think it had more of an impact when I was growing up, when I was playing standing volleyball, where, not having that ankle really does hurt. I think for me, getting older, ice is more scary. It didn't used to be as intimidating, but just the ankle part does affect a lot of stuff, but it's not as detrimental on my life as anything. I mean, it's just being scared of ice and wet floors now.
What challenges did you face going through and getting to compete in sports?
So I grew up in a family that was very much do what you got to do. Like, this is what we're doing. You got to figure out a way. And I was very thankful for that because it didn't allow me to put any challenges in front of me. It was, this is what's happening. You have to figure out a way to do it, because if not, you're going to get left behind. And I think that mentality really helped me going into sports, because it was, yes, you have this disability, you have this setback. You can either let it define you, or you can figure out a way to overcome it and still do what you want to do. And so you definitely had to work harder. I had to go to like some personal trainers to make sure that I knew how to move my body and how to strengthen it the proper way so that I could stay with everybody that I wanted to play. Because I played volleyball growing up. I played a little bit of softball. So for me to stay competitive, to make teams that I wanted to make, there's a lot of outside work that had to happen.
Of course, how was that like, obviously going from playing standing volleyball to getting into adaptive sports and playing sitting volleyball?
So when I started playing sitting volleyball, the Paralympics were not what it is now. I started in 2006, where if you asked what the Paralympics were, people would not have any clue. Or if you did, they kind of coincided it with Special Olympics, and there was adapted sports, and you just didn't know what avenue it was, and you didn't really understand what athletes are in each category. Whereas now there is kind of this separation of what each thing is and what it's doing for those athletes. So for me, not knowing what the Paralympics were, I was very hesitant when I got found. So I was playing standing volleyball, and the referee was the men's assistant coach for sitting volleyball. And she was like, I want you to play. I think you'd be great. And I was like, no, thank you. I can play standing. I don't need this. We're good. And she's like, no, you're going to do it. I'm going to go talk to your parents. So she went and talked to my parents. And then my parents were like, okay, you're going to try it. If you don't like it, you don't have to come back. And then I went out to Colorado Springs and tried it out with the national team, because back then we didn't even have a development program. It was, you went with these adults that have been playing for all these years, and if you're good enough, you get invited back. If you don't, then you don't. So I went out to my first camp and I fell in love with it, and everything that I was, tough, stubborn was out the window. And then I started playing when I was 13 and have been playing ever since.
Of course, as a young adult, being 13, what was that experience like going to this camp where grown women were playing volleyball?
I am a very stubborn person, so I went in and it was a little intimidating, but they were also a very kind group of women. I think the next closest one to my age was 17 or 18. So I was definitely the baby of the group. And, there were people that were like, I could be your mom. I'm like, well, you're not, So it was a very fun environment and a little intimidating because they were so much older, but thankfully I was a little bit more mature for my age, so it wasn't as bad. But it was definitely intimidating. Like, you're going in with all these adults and you're a 13-year-old child. So
How has playing sitting volleyball helped your everyday life, obviously with a disability?
sitting volleyball has changed the course of my life, I think. I moved out to Oklahoma after graduating high school because that's where the sitting team trained. And my life has grown in Oklahoma because of, I moved here for this, but it's changed everything in my life. I love where I'm at. I love coaching. I love being a part of it. I love traveling. So sitting volleyball allows me to travel. I love being able to compete, and I love being able to represent USA and all that stuff. So sitting volleyball has literally just directed my life into a path that I'm really thankful that it has, because I'm looked at as an athlete. I'm not looked at as a disabled athlete. And that's something that I really treasure, because that's what I was afraid of going into Paralympic sports, that you're going to get looked at as less than. And I think the sitting program, as well as the Paralympic movement, has come so far where we're proving that we are elite athletes that just happen to have a disability. So it's been really special to be able to be kind of on that path and seeing it at its baby phase, and now seeing it what it is, where, we're getting airtime, we're getting television time, we're getting, Toyota was a huge sponsor for us. So it's really cool to be a part of this whole journey, I guess.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when coming to adaptive sports?
The biggest challenge, I don't know that I had hard challenges. I think it was more that mentality of being seen as an athlete, because when you play on able-bodied sports, there's such a different mindset, especially with me. My high school coach was like, if you finish behind Heather, then you don't make the team when we ran the mile. And it's, when you're on the sitting team, you're expected to do what everybody else is doing. And so really grabbing on and kind of going towards, you're an athlete, you're an elite athlete, this is what's expected, I think was the biggest challenge. But other than that, having that community was so nice. You just learn so much. So you can't wear a flip-flop, but then your teammates know that if you put a rubber band behind, then you can keep the flip-flop on. And it's just, that's a small thing, but everybody has so much advice and so much to give that it's a really nice environment to be in that you don't know that you're going into until you're there.
Of course, what was that moment like getting to make the national team for the first time and getting to represent Team USA?
So Beijing was my first one, and that was in 2008, and I had been on the team for about a year and a half. I moved out to Oklahoma on my own and trained with the team, and there was 13 athletes training, 12 were going to get taken, and I knew that I was kind of on the bottom end of it because my coach had expressed that to me. And so I trained hard the whole entire year, or the whole entire summer, and then he finally like sat me down and was like, do you want to go to Beijing? And I was like, of course I do. What am I doing here? And then he had told me that I had made roster, and it was really awesome because then I got to call my parents and tell them that I made the team, and they were ecstatic. And my dad is prior military, so he, I really take that flag and that USA to heart, and it was really special that I knew I was going to be able to represent my team and my
What was
country.
that? How was that feeling like, obviously, getting to represent the national team and getting to put on the Team USA uniform?
USA just has such a good vibe to it when you're around and you go into the village, like people want to know USA and see USA, and like we're a country where people are looking at us constantly. And going into the Paralympics, it's really awesome that like when you're in the village where the athletes stay, so it's a big village that all athletes of every country stay, you're just plastered in stuff that says USA on it. And it's such a pride walking through and knowing that like you are the direct representation of what the country is. And so it was a really special moment to just, like we have all this USA gear that we probably don't wear that much any outside of the Paralympic Games, but just USA everywhere, just representing and being like, this is who I am, this is who I'm here for.
Of course, making that Beijing team, what was that feeling like making your first Paralympic team?
Making your first team is always so special because it's something that you've heard of, like the girls have talked about what it is and what it looks like and what, the stories of the Paralympic Games, and meeting all the athletes and meeting all these people and doing all these things, that it's really just like in your mind, it's like little kids to Disney World. Like you make it this big thing and you're so excited and you just want to make it so that you can experience what they experience and kind of start your journey as like a Paralympian, because you're not a Paralympian until you attend. And so it's really special when you make your first team because you want to be a part of that. You are now forever in the Paralympic sitting volleyball history of like you were on this team and you made this team. So it's really special and it means a lot, and it's a big deal for your first one.
What has it been like, obviously, being a Paralympian athlete and getting to travel the world and going to some of these special places like Paris and Rio?
Traveling really opens your eyes, and I was very thankful that I got to travel so young. I mean, it's a very addictive hobby. It's very expensive, but it's cool to see what other countries are, what they do, what they look like, how they interact, the different things. We've gone to all kinds of places where we go to China where you can still see like a lot of their culture that you learn about in school. And then you have like places like Egypt where it's a totally different thing than the US. And then you have Netherlands, it's beautiful, and all these places that you really get to experience it. And I had a really great principal that allowed me to travel, and he was like, you're going to learn more in the world than you will in the classroom with what you're able to do. And it was really cool to have that mentality going in, because you learn so much about just the world when you get to go see it.
What was that experience like getting to go to Paris and getting to compete in the 2012 Paralympics?
London was awesome. That was a place I always wanted to go. It has so much history. I mean, like they still have their traditions with their queen that, that she passed, but they they have so much history to it that it was a really fun place to go. And they put the village right in the middle of kind of the downtown area. So we were able to go out and explore and see everything. London, it's also fun when like there's not a language barrier, because then you can kind of do more and interact with the people more. But it was gorgeous. It was so fun. Like, definitely one of my favorites.
How was that like, obviously getting to travel to Rio and getting to compete in your third Paralympics?
Rio was fun. Rio had a different vibe to it. We went and saw like Christ the Redeemer, which was a really cool experience. And we got to be more interactive with like the village more. We didn't go outside as much. We went to the village, but they did the village so well that it was so much like interaction with athletes, like game areas. They have an international zone where people can come in and do stuff, and so that area was really fun. And we got to walk to our venue, which was nice. So we weren't, gone for 5 hours a day when we had a match. We were only gone for 2 or 3.
What was that feeling like getting to put on those medals that you achieved throughout your career?
Every time I look at them, I'm like, wow, like there's so much history in these medals that I mean, I show my medals to all my girls and stuff like that, and really let them like interact with them and see them, and all that it's really cool for me when I look at them and just remembering those moments of like when you got them, and the celebration after. Rio was our first gold medal, so that one was, we were chaos because we were so happy. But they each hold a special memory. Like the first one, Beijing, I'll always remember as my first medal, and Rio will always be my first gold medal. And so they each have their own little story.
What was that feeling like the first time you got to put on your gear with the organist symbols on them?
Um, for me, it was special because it meant it was real. Like, you think that it's gonna happen, you hope it's gonna happen, and then once you put that gear on, it is happening. So it's just that realization moment that, this is real and this is happening right now.
Of course, besides the Paralympics, what are some of your favorite memories competing and sitting volleyball?
My favorite memories are just when I'm with my team and I'm interacting and we're just having fun. Like, you go to these foreign countries and things are gonna happen. Like, we were in Italy training for Worlds, and at like 2 in the morning, the fire alarm went out, and everybody in the hotel had to go out and sit on the curb. And, they don't just have the blinking, they have a lady that talks on the screen that's like, there's an emergency, please leave your room. And you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what's happening. And I think it's those moments that are just wild, that you don't, it's just experiences that you wouldn't get anywhere else if you weren't like with your team in these foreign countries where you don't know what's going on.
How's it been like, obviously, helping your young athletes that are either rookies or just starting their Paralympic experiences?
I think it's cool for me because I'm at kind of the back end of my career where I've done a lot of stuff, and I know that there's kind of an end point for me. I think it's really special that I get to watch the new generation of athletes that are, eventually going to take our spots and take my spot for sure. In representing the sport as well as the Paralympic movement. And I think it's cool just to see them and see them grow and see them at their baby phases, and really be able to like watch and support them as they get older. And then, this team becomes their team, and, they're fighting for their gold medals.
What are some of the things that you've done so far to give back to the disability community that has given you so much?
So I when I was in North Carolina, I did a lot of camps and clinics and stuff, and just introduced a lot of sport. I also have worked with Wounded Warriors. I coached the sitting volleyball team, which was a really special experience to me because military. So I'm so passionate about the military and stuff like that. So that was fun to take athletes who kind of had their world rocked, and then teaching them about sitting volleyball. And then as well, I coach 13-year-olds, so middle schoolers, And every year I let them learn how to play volleyball. I make them come watch and come see. And I think it's just about getting the knowledge out there of what adapted sports is, what sitting volleyball is, and kind of putting a face to a word so that they know what they're doing, they know what they're looking at. And then hopefully down the road, if they find an amputee or someone with a disability, they can be like, oh, I know about this and I've done this and this and this. And I've had some athletes that I've had a long time ago that are in college or married that have texted me and been like, I know this girl and she just had her leg amputated. She wants to do sports. And then it's fun for me to kind of help that person like move on and like, what sport are you interested in? What do you like doing? And finding an avenue where they can, find a different way to go with their life.
What is that like, obviously getting to meet your fans that also have disabilities and sharing that moment with your fans?
I think when you meet somebody that has a disability, it's different than just a fan, because I think there's a commonality where you know what that person's going through, maybe not specifically what that has happened to them, but you know where they're at. You know that there's like a desperation to do something with meaning, with purpose, but you don't know how, and you don't know what it's going to look like, and you don't know if you can. And I think it's special when you meet them because that's their first opportunity to see adapted sports and see that there's this whole world that you don't know about. And I think it's special because sitting volleyball in Paralympics is so small but big, where you don't know about it, and then once you know about it, you know all about it. And so it's nice when you get to meet those disabled athletes that are, your fan at that point, because then they end up becoming somebody else's fan.
How's it been able to balance, obviously, life outside of being a Paralympian sitting volleyball player?
Being a professional athlete is a monster of a task. I mean, we have competition dates, we have training dates, it helps pay the bills, it doesn't fully pay the bills. So you have outside jobs, you have outside work. For me, I've been lucky enough to coach, so I've been able to kind of maneuver my schedule where I coach in the afternoons and I train in the mornings. But I mean, it's a balancing act. It's a lot that you put on your plate, and there's a lot expected of you. And I think athletes in general expect a lot of themselves anyways. So you're putting your pressures, your team pressures, paying the bills at the end of the month. And so it's just a huge balancing act that you really have to be disciplined in what you're doing and how you're organizing it. And I think if you are able to balance it, it's a really rewarding career. I think that it's just, you got to have that right mentality going into it of, sometimes it's going to be chaotic.
Of course, what are some of the things that you are preparing for the next 4 years to prepare for your next Paralympic journeys?
So Paris is coming up next year, and then after that, that will be LA will be my last games. So the preparation is going to be try to be at your best, but it's also going to be enjoy it, where you always look towards what's next, and it's going to be an interesting vibe when there is no what's next. Like LA is it. And so I think going into Paris, we're obviously like everybody's trying to get healthy. We've had a lot of injuries, and we've had a lot of people having children and stuff like that. So I think the team is focused on getting back into the gym and getting focused for that. And then after Paris, I think I'm just looking forward to enjoying everything, like taking it all in, enjoying it, because I know it's kind of the last quad.
What advice do you give those people with disabilities that are looking to get into adaptive sports?
Do it, try everything. If you are passionate about anything, go try it. Like there's so many avenues and there's so many places that you can go. And there's a lot of people that are wanting to help, and it's not, they're there to help, and they're there to give you your best chance. And if you want to try surfing, go find somewhere to go try surfing. If you want to do snowboarding, go try to do snowboarding. If you want to do sitting volleyball, I think sometimes people are hesitant to try new things because they're not sure if they're going to be good at it or bad. And I think as an amputee, like, who cares? Like, just go try it. Like, try everything, try anything, because the community is something you can't replicate anywhere. You can't find the same group of people that know your struggle, that know what's going on. And even if you don't play it at my level where you're playing nationally or internationally, like, go play and have fun, like, meet some people that are on common ground.
Of course, what advice would you give those people that are looking to become Paralympians and represent a national team and the country?
It's hard work, but it's worth it. Especially Paralympics now, it's very competitive. I mean, there's tons of athletes now because the awareness is so much. But if you're able to experience it, it's something that will live with you forever. And don't let your emotions get you, because it's very competitive and it's very aggressive, and you're competing against different countries. It's not just people in your state, but it's amazing to be able to represent the country you live in. And so work hard, do it. So fun.
That's great advice. Where can our listeners find you at on social media?
I am on Instagram, and that's about it. I
Thank
don't
you
do
again.
TikTok or Twitter.
Thank you again, Heather Erickson, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the U.S. Paralympian sitting volleyball team.
Thank you.
You can find Community Heroes on Facebook at Community Heroes, Instagram at Community Heroes_NC, Twitter at com_heroes, and you can find us on YouTube at officially Community Heroes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Heather, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You are watching Community Heroes. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Community Heroes on social media and on YouTube.